could pesticides also have contributed to the decline of the common sparrow?
When we talk about a particular thing, we say pesticides. Anything which is used in abundance, naturally that would be harmful.
In 1943, India witnessed what was called the Great Bengal Famine. That led, as people say, to the Green Revolution. And अब उसके बाद अब हम सेल्फ सफिशिएंट हो गए एज अ नेशन. तो ये सेल्फ सफिशिएंसी में पेस्टिसाइड्स का कितना हाथ था?
पहले मैं कुछ क्लैरिफाई करूँगा
जी.
1943 was the year of the Bengal famine, and in that particular year the famine occurred not because there was shortage of food, because there was abundant food in the country, but it was being diverted by the British to feed the army. The Green Revolution occurred in 1966 when India imported 18,000 tons of seed from Mexico. Then history was written because of the first year, the crop harvest in 1967 was the bumper crop harvest. The technology at that time was talking about dwarf wheats, fertilizer responsive varieties. Once you have fertilizer responsive varieties would mean a lot of biomass, and that would mean it attracts insects. So therefore they brought in pesticides. But actually, if you look back now, you realize that pesticides were not required.
तो ये जो स्प्रे आप करते हैं,
हाँ,
ये आपने जो दवा डाला, ये आपको कौन बताता है कौन सा दवा डालना चाहिए?
कौन बताता है?
हाँ, ये अपने से
स्टोर वाले दुकानदार
वो क्या कहते हैं?
बैगनी का दवा ये है, इसको ले जाओ, अच्छा रहेगा।
लेकिन आपने एक नहीं दो दवा डाला, एक में दो दवा मिला के डाला था।
4 किस्म के, 5 किस्म के, 3 किस्म के डालते। फल आने का अलग है, फूल आने का अलग है, कीड़ा मरने का अलग है, हजारों किस्म के आइटम है।
Excessive use of pesticide, university never recommends. But recommended doses of pesticide will have to be applied. Otherwise, no production, no green revolution can sustain. No vegetable can be produced without zero pesticide.
ಸುಮಿಸಿಡಿನ್ ಈಗ ಆಗಿದೆ ಟಾಟಾಫೆನ್, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಬೆಳೆಯ 3-in-1 ಸುರಕ್ಷಾದಳ. ಇದು ಕೀಟಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ದಾಳಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಕ್ಷಿಪ್ರವಾಗಿ ಅವನ್ನು ನಾಶಪಡಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ಹತ್ತಿ ಕಾಯಿಗಳಿಂದ ಅವುಗಳನ್ನು ಕಿತ್ತೆಳೆದು ಮುಗಿಸಿ ಬಿಡುತ್ತದೆ. ಇನ್ನು ಅವು ಗಿಡಗಳ ಮೇಲೆ ಮೊಟ್ಟೆ ಇಡುವುದನ್ನು ತಡೆಯುತ್ತದೆ. ರ್ಯಾಲಿಸ್ನ ಟಾಟಾಫೆನ್, ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರದ ತ್ರಿಗುಣಶೀಲ ಬೆಳೆ ಸುರಕ್ಷೆ.
Ever since the Americans started pushing in what is called as the land grant system of education, which was supported by USAID, and set up universities in India, what is supposed to take care of not only agriculture research, teaching and also extension, is actually based on the premise that farmers are foolish and these fellows don't know how to do agriculture.
अभी जो आप दवा डालने से कीड़ा मरता है?
मरता भी है, मरता है, मरता नहीं है तो हजार हजार 2,000 3,000 का दवा कैसे डालते हैं, मरता है, रह भी जाता है। अगर नहीं करेगा तो फिर क्या करेंगे किसान लोग, क्या करेंगे बता।
कभी आपने सोचा जो आप दवा डालते हैं खाने में तो दवा बैगन में छट जा सकता है?
वो तो उसका ताकत तक खींच लेता है बैगन,
दवा तो अंदर कैसे जाएगा, असर जाएगा। खेती ही है ये, सारा दुनिया जाता है, खाता है लोग, बिकता है। इसने तोड़ के ले जाना है मंडी, मंडी वाले ने गहा दी गहा।
मेरे देश की धरती सोना उगले उगले हैं हीरे मोती, मेरे देश की धरती, मेरे देश की धरती।
So would you say that the Green Revolution has really been successful?
See, if that particular time in history, there was a desperation. There was a desperation to become food self-sufficient, to produce more in the country. Otherwise, millions would have died of hunger.
Years 2020 or 25, we will need about 500 million tons of the food. So from where to get this food?
So we went on educating farmers that if you have a problem of, let's say, micronutrient deficiency in the soils, then you add more fertilizer. This time you add zinc also, molybdenum and calcium and so on and so forth into the soil. And then if you have insects problem, then you go on adding pesticides, their cocktails, or the second generation, third generation, fourth generation chemicals. Now that is what we try to push into the farming systems. And look at what has happened today. The green revolution has collapsed now in India.
इस सब चीज़ इतना कैसे फैल गई कि पहले तो इतनी खुशहाली होती थी।
ये जी जिम्मेदार इतना कर्जे से दबा हुआ है,
दूसरा महंगाई इतनी बढ़ गई है, किसान बेचारा क्या करेगा। डीजल की कीमतें कहाँ तक चलेगी, पेट्रोल बढ़ गया, खादें बढ़ गई, लेकिन फसल का दाम तो नहीं ना बढ़ा।
मैंने तो ये भी सुना है कि एक एकड़ में 3-4 हज़ार रुपये का स्प्रे हो जाता है।
हाँ, पता क्या कि एक हमारे जिम्मेदार हैं जो रात को हर साल मतलब पंजाब में कम से कम 20-30 किसान की मौत होती है। एक किले के ऊपर में 3,500 का खर्चा है और उसके बाद में ठेका, और अगर मंडी में जाके बिके नहीं ज़मीन तो जिम्मेदार मौत नहीं करेगा तो क्या करेगा। गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से वो कैप्टन अमरिंदर सिंह के भी बयान आए, टीवी में हमने सुने कि 5 लाख रुपया उसको मिलेगा, तो 1 लाख रुपया सुखबीर बादल उसने अपनी एक टीम भेजी, उसका जो ब्रदर इन लॉ इधर आया हमारे पास, उसने बैठ के हमारे साथ अफसोस भी किया और बोला कि हम जब इसका भोग है तो उस दिन हम आएंगे तो 1 लाख हम कैश दे के जाएंगे। जो भी हमारे पास आए किसी ने हमको नहीं बोला, बाकी जो हमारी मदद की है, लेकिन जो मदद की बात एक और है। अगर हम बोले कि गुरदेव सिंह भाई आ जाए, वो तो नहीं आ सकता है। पैसा तो मिल जाता है लेकिन वो तो नहीं। जिम्मेदार है ऐसी हम लोग की कौम है, हम और कोई काम कर नहीं सकते, हम अलावा खेती के और कोई काम नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि हमारा ये बड़ों से, हमारे बाप दादा से ये काम चलता आ रहा है, खेती का ही काम। अगर ऐसे होता रहा तो जब कर्जा चढ़ता गया तो एक गुरदेव सिंह मरा है और बहुत गुरदेव सिंह मरेंगे।
In real terms, if you were to take care of the inflation and plus the terms of trade, what the farmer is getting as a price for his produce today is what he was getting 20 years back. Tell me which Tata or Birla in India can survive if they were getting the same kind of a price which they were getting 20 years back. The reality is that the economic policies of this country are actually against the farmers. It is all meant to exploit agriculture for the benefit of the industry here.
पहले खेती अच्छी थी कि अभी अच्छी है?
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਖਾ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਕੋਈ ਵਾਸਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਰਾਮ ਨਾਲ, ਘਿਓ ਵੀ ਚੰਗੇ, ਦੁੱਧ ਵੀ ਚੰਗਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਆ ਕਣਕ ਵੀ ਚੰਗੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ, ਆ ਸਬਜ਼ੀ ਲਾਉਂਦੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੰਗੀ ਮਿੱਠੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ। ਹੁਣ ਮਿਠਾਸ ਕਿਸੇ चीज़ नहीं, जहर हो गई है।
हर बच्चे को किसी देख लो उसको सांस की बीमारी हो गई है, आँखों को किसी की निगाह, हर आदमी की टेस्ट करवा लो,
निगाह ही नहीं,
किसकी निगाह नहीं है। सांस रेशा इतनी बीमारी बढ़ गई कि उसका कोई हद भी नहीं है। पहले सरकार ने अनाज बनाने के लिए भी खुशहाली लाएंगे, हरा इनकलाब बोला, फिर वाइट इनकलाब बोला। वो तो नरमा जो कणक वाला इनकलाब बनाया है वो बीमारियों का इनकलाब बन गया है। कोई भी पेस्टिसाइड से चीज़ बची नहीं है जिसको हम कह सकें वे ये सही है।
चोर 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 बाबा, खा बघा, कापसाचा चोर।
हो बाळा, कितीही औषधं वापरली तरी हा आपली पिकं नष्ट करून टाकतो।
विविध प्रकारच्या टेस्ट साबित करतात की सामान्य कीटकनाशकं किडे मारण्यास असमर्थ ठरतात, पण केमिनोवा स्वस्त सामान्य कीटकनाशकांपेक्षा जास्त परिणामकारक आहे आणि आपली पिकं जास्त काळापर्यंत सुरक्षितही ठेवतं।
काय बाबा, आता कापसाचे चोर येणार नाहीत ना?
कसे येतील, तुझ्यासारखा पोलीसवाला जो आहे
आणि केमिनोवा सारखा रक्षक।
सर अभी मैं पूरा बठिंडा डिस्ट्रिक्ट में घूम रहा था। हाँ सर। मुझे पता चला कि बठिंडा से बीकानेर एक ट्रेन चलती है। हाँ, जिसको कैंसर ट्रेन बोलते हैं। हाँ सर, बीमारी। कितने लोग आपके नाम से,
मतलब करीब 100 में से 100% में से करीब 50% बीमार लोग। बिल्कुल ये 4 फुट पड़ा है, ये सब मरीज लोग हैं। लोग सामने पड़ा 4, बठिंडा है, हनुमानगढ़ है, संगरिया है, पीलीबंगा है, सब मतलब आसपास के गांव, छोटे गांव के।
आप बीकानेर क्यों जा रहे हैं?
अपने डैडी से कैंसर है सर, उसको लेकर जा रहे हैं। उसको पहले बार गए थे सब, अभी 25-30 मिनट फर्क है सब। इसी ट्रेन में जाते हैं सर, ट्रेन में अच्छी सुविधा है, अभी ठीक चल रहा है।
आपके एरिया से कितने लोग जाते हैं?
हमारे पंजाब में 80% जा रहा है सब।
कर रहा हूँ किसी से वफा कर रहा हूँ।
ਪ੍ਰੀਤਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੈ ਜੀ।
ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਆਏ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ?
ਅਸੀਂ ਦਲੇਵਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਆਏ ਜੀ, ਪਿੰਡ ਮਾਨਸਾ ਜ਼ਿਲ੍ਹਾ,
ਪੰਜਾਬ ਤੋਂ।
ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ।
ਕੀ ਤਕਲੀਫ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ?
ਤਕਲੀਫ ਕੈਂਸਰ ਹੈ ਜੀ।
ਗਲੇ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਜੀ, ਕੱਛਾਂ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਸੀ, ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਸੀ।
ਟੈਸਟ ਕਰਾਏ ਸੀਗੇ
ਤੇ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਕੀ ਦੱਸੀ ਇਹਨੂੰ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ,
ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਕੀ ਦੱਸੀ?
ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਕੈਂਸਰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜੀ।
पंजाब में इतना कैंसर क्यों हो रहा है, कुछ पता है आपको?
ये तो मालूम है।
Disease as well as the deaths due to cancers are certainly higher in Talwandi Sabo area as compared to a control area which we took Chamkaur Sahab in district Ropar. Probably the multiple factors are responsible for this, and it has been found that the proportion of smokers, the people who are using alcohol, then the indiscriminate use of pesticide, they were significantly higher among the cases as compared to the
I think sometimes the newspapers or even research scientists, I would say they over-exaggerate their data. We should first take a large number of data, not 1 or 2 cases.
Problem is more there in female, and the type of cancer which we have found among the females are mainly the reproductive cancers.
Because most women don't smoke or drink or drugs, you know.
Good question, but at the same time when we did the analysis for the heavy metals in the ground and the surface water, it was found that the level of arsenic, mercury and even selenium was higher than the permissible level.
Of course cancer is there, but it is not because of the pesticides. We took the samples from the soil, from the water, from the vegetables. Nowhere we found any pesticides. But it was the arsenic which was found in the groundwater.
And the pesticide which we have found in in the water, vegetables and this blood like heptachlor, they are even banned in this country.
It is only this much concentration can only come if we are continuing using the same pesticides. We are not using the single pesticide, and there are many pesticides which are not carcinogenic, which does not contain arsenic at all.
There is evidence that pesticide they can cause cancers, and International Agency for Research on Cancer, they have released a list of the possible carcinogens.
Dr. Saab, your theory that deals with the decline in the female sex ratio due to pesticides, how did you come about this?
We had conducted a study, collecting the data from the labor room. Now, to our surprise, what we found that the rate of the congenital anomaly was pretty high over here. And the commonest congenital anomaly was brainless child. Now then we wanted to see what could be the possible factor, what could be the possible, which is operating over the entire population that is coming to that hospital. And that hospital, the 2 hospitals that we covered, they conduct virtually 30,000 deliveries. The brain is formed in the first few weeks of pregnancy. Or if there is any insult that is there, environmental insult, which would be affecting the formation of the brain, that insult has already operated and the brain is damaged. Now, since it occurs in the first few weeks of pregnancy, we back calculated from that the month of conception, we back calculated. And we found that there were 2 peaks coincided with the months in which the fresh crops come to the market. Because the fresh crop, they carry a lot of these pesticide residues. The brainlessness is formed because of the folic acid deficiency. Now, what could lead to this folic acid deficiency? We know as a matter of fact the different types of pesticides that are there which affect the folic acid metabolism. In other words, they are folic acid antagonists. When we analyze these brainless children, you would be surprised 80% of them are female children.
You were a consultant on the Greenpeace study called Arrested Development. How is that study significant, you feel?
That is very significant because they have studied the pesticide exposure on the in children, and that is the developmental of children, and there is a significant difference has been found between the population that is exposed to pesticide and the population that is not exposed to pesticide.
The extent of pesticide use by farmers prompted Greenpeace to conduct a study to understand how pesticides were affecting the mental development of children of farmers. The idea emerged from a similar study in Mexico, which showed shocking results of decreased development of mental health in children exposed to pesticides.
Both groups of children were asked to play simple games like catching a ball, perform jumping jacks, arrange blocks to identify their mental abilities, eye-hand coordination, and memory tests. The children from these 6 districts performed far worse on almost all the tests.
It's a worrying trend. I mean, if it's at a rural level, it could also happen to kids on an urban level?
Sure, certainly. I mean, that's a warning one, but this warning has to be accepted. We are ruining the entire our generation. The whole population would be affected.
सुन लो मिस्टर क्लीन, मैं तेरी क्वीन समझ गए ना। हर कीड़ों के भर के दिन है अब घर क्लीन समझ गए ना। रखना हो घर फाइन कीड़ों के बिन तो नॉट 99।
कई गाँव का पानी ऐसा है कि उससे कैंसर की बीमारी आती है।
और जब टेस्ट किया ना इस साल सरकार ने टेस्ट करवाए 2-3 गाँव में से, तो सबसे बड़ा जो कारण था वो ये निकला कि इस एरिया में पेस्टिसाइड की जो बरतों है ज़्यादा होती है। किसान करता है तो कम से कम शरीर पे कोई ना कोई तो बुरा असर पड़ता ही पड़ता है।
इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा रोल जो है ना एग्रीकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटीज़ और अपने एग्रीकल्चर डिपार्टमेंट्स का है। यदि उनके एग्रीकल्चर डिपार्टमेंट के इंस्पेक्टर्स इतने सतर्क हैं और ठीक राय दे रहे हैं किसानों को कि भाई सिर्फ एक ही पेस्टिसाइड आपने यूज़ करना, ना कि उसकी कॉकटेल यूज़ करनी है, ये सारा काम ठीक हो जाएगा।
Procedure in the university is this, as in our university, whatever pesticide is registered, then we test its bioefficacy for 3 years on a particular crop against a particular pest. And if we find that it is really working or it is killing the pest to desired level, only then we recommend its use by the farmers.
आपकी जो कंपनी है वो आपको ये बताती है?
हाँ, ट्रेनिंग देती है।
ट्रेनिंग होती है हमारी, बताती है। हम फार्मर को गांव में जाके बताते हैं, उनकी फसल देखते हैं, उनको स्प्रे के लिए कहते हैं कि ये दवा करो।
मेरे को तो ऐसे ये लग रहा है कि ये कहीं और गेम प्ले हो रही है।
जो फार्मर है उसको तो उसका तो खर्चा ज़्यादा होता है सुंडी आने पे, वो तो नहीं चाहता कि सुंडी आए। मगर जो पेस्टिसाइड वाले हैं, कंपनियां हैं, ये चाहती हैं कि हमारी तो पेस्टिसाइड बिके, इसलिए कोई ना कोई हल निकलना चाहिए।
या तो डीलरों को या मैन्युफैक्चरर्स को ज़्यादा फ़ायदा देने के लिए सारा ये काम हो रहा है।
अब तो फिर फसल, अब तो पेस्टिसाइड कम सेल हुआ है ना, इसलिए नुकसान तो सब कस्टमर का भी हो गया, डीलर का भी हो गया, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर का भी हो गया, सबको ही लॉस है। कंपनियों का भी लॉस है, गवर्नमेंट को भी लॉस है, उसको ड्यूटी नहीं आ रही, सारों को, सभी को लॉस है। जब कम बिकती है जब पेस्टिसाइड, जितनी ज़्यादा बिकेगी उतनी सबको फायदा ज़्यादा रहेगा।
ये लॉबी क्रिएट हो रही हैं, ये लॉबीज़ को किसने तोड़ना है? एग्रीकल्चर डिपार्टमेंट ने तोड़ना है, यूनिवर्सिटीज़ ने तोड़ना है। किसानों के बस की बात नहीं है, वो तो भोले इंसान है, जो वहाँ पहुँच गया अपना मटेरियल लेके वो उसको यूज़ कर देगा।
ये दवा की बात कर रहे हैं, ये बिल्कुल आदमी के लिए और वातावरण के लिए बिल्कुल ठीक है।
The International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines, which is the institute for promulgating all these kinds of policies or technologies for the national agriculture research systems in different countries, and is based in the Philippines, in Manila in Philippines, as we all know, is an institute which has now accepted that pesticides were a waste of time and effort in Asia on rice. It has taken them 40 years to realize that pesticides were not required. Now, why didn't they stand up at that particular time when environmentalists were questioning the need to spray pesticides? They did not. They went on promoting. Today, 40 years later, they are saying pesticides are not required because farmers in the central Luzon province in Philippines, which is the rice growing area, farmers in Vietnam, farmers in Bangladesh produce higher yields of rice without using pesticides and fertilizers. Now, if that is true, why shouldn't we hold these scientists accountable for pushing in pesticides without realizing the negative impacts? Why I'm saying about why I'm worried about negative impacts is, let's just take the issue of people dying from pesticide poisoning. The World Health Organization tells us that every year 20,000 people die from pesticide poisoning. Majority of this, of course, is in the developing countries. If you multiply this by 40 is the number of years of Green Revolution, that means 800,000 people have actually died from pesticide poisoning all over the world.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
Now, there are 3,000 people who died in the World Trade Center's attack, and the world went topsy-turvy. 800,000 people have died. Nobody is even questioning the agriculture scientists and the industry.
Give me red. Give me red! Give me red! If you're not red, you're dead.
And have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence.
What are the toxicological effect of pesticides?
Pesticides are chemicals, and they are meant to kill certain pests for farming, mostly for farming. And something which is poisonous to one kind of organism can be poisonous to other organisms also. So human body is one such thing. The question is that when do pesticides start becoming harmful to human bodies? And that is a difficult question to answer, because there are different studies which are emerging on how much harm, how much quantities of pesticides do. But essentially, when you spray pesticides on the field, then several things happen. Not all the pesticides falls on the pest you're trying to kill. Some of it falls on the plants, some of it falls in the soil, goes into the air, and also the person who's spraying it also inhales a large quantity of it. Now, there's also studies to show that some of the pesticide which goes into the air has some migration pattern, so it will be staying in the air, then also going with the wind pattern around the area. So it's a chemical which starts residing there. And depending on what chemical you use, it will have different kinds of harmful effects. All the studies which you see the last 30 years done in this country, and some of these are long-term studies, something like, there's an acclaimed study which happens for a long-term study. You'll find high levels of pesticides in almost more than 50 to 60% of food which is being served on our tables today. And it's a scary thought that it is not something which is happening out there, but it's happening in our daily lives, on our breakfast table, on our dining table in a daily sense.
Me quisiste, lo sé, yo también te he querido, me olvidaste después, pero yo no he podido a sufrir por tu amor, me condenó el destino, ¿qué le vamos a hacer? Yo tenía que perder y he perdido contigo.
Total diet study which was done by Agriculture University in Kanpur and by Punjab Agriculture University, where what they did was they actually picked up the food from the market, cooked it, and then tested the level of pesticide in those food. And they found very clearly that the daily exposure through food only was far, far higher than EDI.
So that does not take into account the environment, the water?
No, nothing.
Even Coca-Cola? No?
Nothing, of course no. Coca-Cola is not an essential diet.
केला तो एकदम पीला पीला हो गया।
हाँ जी।
पहले तो हरा आता होगा।
हाँ, हरा आता है।
तो इसको पकाने में कितना टाइम जाता है?
8 घंटे लगते हैं। इसको हीट देते हैं ना, या कार्बोरेटर के साथ।
किसके साथ?
मसाला होता है ना कार्बोरेटर,
हाँ।
उसको हीट देते हैं पहले, इसकी हड्डी बांधते हैं। पत्थर होता है ना, इसमें ना भन कर छोटी छोटी डली करके इसमें पूरी बना लेते हैं। ऐसे हड्डी बनी जाती है, गर्म होता है ना पहले, फिर इसके ऊपर बर्फ लग जाती है ऐसे,
और केले पे रख देते बस। यहाँ पे केला कितना आप लोग कैसे दर्जन बेचते हैं?
सैकड़े के साथ।
सैकड़े?
हाँ जी।
क्या रेट सैकड़ा बिकता है?
150 रुपये।
बाजार में कितना बिकता है?
25 रुपये दर्जन।
दर्जन? बहुत फायदा है।
हाँ, ये फायदा तो है। जब फायदा है तभी तो कारोबार चलते हैं।
The impact of pesticide right now felt by population is of chronic nature. It's not of acute nature. Chronic means you are being exposed to pesticide in tiny doses, very small dose, every day for the rest of your life. So there is a risk. Now, any good governance will ensure that the risk is mitigated. Are we doing that? The answer is no. Unfortunately, we have allowed pesticide without setting proper regulations. Let me detail it out for you. There are two fundamental acts in this country which looks at pesticide regulation. One is Insecticide Act. Now, Insecticide Act will only look at registration of pesticide, its sales and manufacturing and export in the country. It has no other relationship with anything. It means if you want to register and produce a pesticide, you go to Insecticide Act, which is under Ministry of Agriculture. That act was enacted after massive acute poisoning, which happened in Karnataka, which happened in Orissa, which happened in Maharashtra. There is no article in that act which addresses chronic poisoning. Second mistake is there is another law, legislation, which is called as Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, which is administered by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Now they are supposed to monitor pesticide in food commodities. The tragedy is that Ministry of Agriculture registers pesticide. The food standard is set by Ministry of Health, but there is no talking between each other. What is the result? Result is we are registering more pesticide, but we are not setting standards for their on standards of them on food commodities.
Actually, regulatory setup is there. मतलब laws है, rules है, procedures है, implementation की बात है जो.
But sir, ये job किसका है फिर implementation का? This is something.
ये तो health ministry का job है. Health ministry भी accept करती है कि हाँ कमियाँ रही हैं, अभी हम improve कर रहे हैं. भाई ऐसा है ना कि ये सच्चाई इतनी बड़ी सच्चाई है कि वो refuse करना बहुत मुश्किल है.
Yeah, may I speak to Mr. Ranganathan, please?
जी बोल रहा हूँ.
हाँ Ranganathan जी, मेरा नाम सुमित खन्ना है. I met you yesterday.
Sir?
Sumit Khanna from Mumbai.
हाँ बोलिए.
We were supposed to arrange a meeting with Sir, Secretary Health.
सिर्फ ऐसा जो मैसेज लिख के दिए हुए हैं.
हाँ
आपने कोई टाइम इंडिकेट नहीं किए हैं.
हाँ तो फिर कैसे मुलाकात हो पाएगी?
एक सेकंड होल्ड करना है. आपने तो कोई टाइम इंडिकेट नहीं किया है.
But sir, this is something to do with public health. I've been at it for 1 month.
Sorry, actually we feel definitely sorry क्योंकि लोग आके मिल के जाते हैं. साहब हो सकता है इम्प्रेस नहीं हुए होंगे या साहब ने सोचे होंगे तो इसलिए अदरवाइज साहब लोग तो मिल के जाते हैं.
हाँ रणबीर सिंह साहब से बात कर सकते हैं?
हाँ जी बोल रहा हूँ.
रणबीर सिंह साहब नमस्कार, मैं सुमित खन्ना बोल रहा हूँ. हेलो.
हाँ खन्ना जी.
जी नमस्कार.
नमस्कार. वो ऐसा है कि साहब यहाँ तब से दफ्तर में आए ही नहीं है.
सर मेरी तो साहब से मुलाकात.
ये बहुत दिक्कत वाली बात हो गई और वो शनिवार को आते हैं एक आध बार कुछ देर के लिए.
सर बीच में तो आए थे, एक लेटर भी उनके सेक्रेटरी को मेरा मिला था.
आए थे वहाँ पे, आए और तुरंत चले गए. और वो बैठे तो सही ना कुछ देर.
सर आप मेरा लेटर तो पुट फॉरवर्ड कर दीजिए उनके पास.
नहीं फॉरवर्ड वो तो उन्होंने देख लिया है.
अच्छा.
मेरे पास जो आपका आया है ना ऊपर से डीजी के ऑफिस से
जी,
तो उसमें लिखा हुआ है डीजी हैज सीन.
यस.
आई ओनली हैव टू स्पीक टू हिम इन डिटेल.
जी.
तो बस उनको उनकी नोट चाहिए.
ओके थैंक यू.
ओके
थैंक यू. So our act seems to be more in favor of chemical companies than for the individual.
Of course, there is no issue about it, and in fact I'll say probably it was drafted by them.
We've reached the stage because an industry that was created during the war to kill human beings, after the wars, decided to continue to sell products that were meant to kill humans as inputs to agriculture. The pesticide industry is a war industry. And I believe those who have failed society, those who have failed the human species, the human community, are those in government who pushed for pesticide application as if agriculture couldn't be done without it. Every scientist who, in spite of seeing the failure of pesticides in the field, in spite of seeing that pesticides kill friendly insects faster than they kill pests, that they lead to resurgence epidemics, that they lead to emergence of resistance, each of which is a recipe to create more pests. The scientists who lied with their work, with pesticides. Of course, the companies to begin with. And it's this triple crime, the crime of the scientific community, of government agencies, and the industry that gains by selling poisons to society and poisoning the earth and poisoning our bodies. Whose responsibility is to stop it? Vested interests have the responsibility, but vested interests have never been responsible.
Early 30s you developed DDT. 70s you got a scare of DDT, that it is persistent, it is endocrine disruptor. What did chemical company do? It came out with two pesticides, endosulfan. What was endosulfan? You remove one chlorine from DDT, attach a sulfur molecule. It became endosulfan and it became safe. What happened later on? In early 80s you found no, there is a problem with endosulfan also. So what do chemical companies do? They come out with organophosphorus. They say fine, organophosphorus is not persistent. 90s, everyone in Europe and America says organophosphorus has huge impact on kids. What do? You start banning organophosphorus. Then what industry does? It comes with parathyroids. So this is a very clear treadmill. And there is huge interest, in fact there is huge interest to ensure that a pesticide is banned, a new one is introduced. And I'll tell you why. There is a 20-year period of royalty which you provide an inventor through intellectual property right.
See, despite the fact that we do have record food grains and our granaries are overflowing with food, we've not really been able to eradicate hunger, which is what I think food security should be all about.
Well, these are two different things. One, the farmers are supposed to produce food. They've done their job. Now, the food is there, as we all know. And yet, there are 320 million people, 1/3 of the world's hungry, who go to bed hungry every day in India or with empty stomach in India. Now, that shows that there is no political will to feed the hungry. There's no reason, no government in the world would do what exactly Indian government is doing. You know, you have food stocked in the country, they export food, they don't feed their own people. And it is being imagined that, you know, the dollars that we earn will go to feed those people.
इस धरती पे जिसने जन्म लिया, इस धरती पे जिसने जन्म लिया, उसने ही पाया प्यार तेरा, यहाँ अपना पराया कोई नहीं, यहाँ अपना पराया कोई नहीं है, सब पे माँ पुकार तेरा, है सब पे माँ पुकार तेरा, मेरे देश की धरती।
Lot of our population does not have the buying power to purchase. So, but we have to take care, and we have to produce for everybody. So that is a separate issue, that is not in the hand of the scientists. Scientists, our duty was put that you should produce more and more. So we have to produce how circulation of food circulation or what methodology government follows, and that lies with the government. That does not lie with the scientists.
But if there is a will, you think we have enough food grains that nobody will go hungry?
It is not difficult in this country. You have abundant resources, you have farmers producing food, they don't know what to do with their food. There's no government which is coming to buy their food. Today, the government is wanting to withdraw from procurement also. So if the farmers were given the incentive, they could produce still more. And they could feed the hungry in India. There's no dearth of money also. All that you need to feed the hungry in this country is about 10,000 crores. And you have 1,50,000 crores locked with just 300 people, what you call as the non-performing assets with the banks. Nobody's talking about that.
But still, I want to mention here that if we compare our country with other countries, these countries like Hong Kong, They are using 70 kg active ingredient per hectare. Even US is using 2.5 something. Europe is using 3.5 kg. Japan is using 12 kg. India is using half kg only.
If you take India as a landmass or number of people per capita, we come to nothing. Because when you divide by the landmass of 1 billion, you come to very small figures. But that's not the usage pattern. There are concentrated usage areas. You will find where pesticide in cotton crops where you need to use 3 sprayings, you're doing 15 sprayings. Or vegetable crops, you're doing excessive sprayings. And I think we need to start to look at what's happening on the ground, what the usage patterns are for a certain area, rather than just out per capita figures, which actually hide more than what they reveal.
Because these are the phases. There was a phase in the country which we do not have the food. So at that time, nobody bothered how to produce. Everybody was, politicians, bureaucrats, scientists, everybody was after this, that we have to feed the growing population. So at that time, these things were not taken into consideration. Of course, there was misuse and abuse and excessive use of pesticide just to have more and more produce. It has definitely created so many problems. But now we are aware of all these things and we are taking care of all this. There should be a caution. We should caution the farmers, caution the users that these are the precautions you must take. But we should not create panic. But now situation has become where the panic is being created. So things cannot work like that, because we have to face the realities also. As I mentioned, we have to feed the growing population and we have to just double than now. In the next 20 years, we have to double our productions.
दिखी बच गई। ठीक है उस्ताद, लगाओ निशाना। जल्दी करो उस्ताद, इन सूंडियों को शुरू से ना मारा तो ये पूरी कपास खा जाएंगी। सुबह से लगे हो, सिर्फ 5 सूंडियां मारी है। उस्ताद कुछ करो ना।
सूंडियां मारने का बेहतर उपाय। डिसीज, असर सही, नुकसान नहीं।
So now finally, who can we blame? The agriculture scientist who over the years has been saying you need to use pesticides, or the farmer who has to use it at times indiscriminately, as the government would say, the government who is lax in implementing it, or the pesticide lobby who flaunts all rules to manufacture it, or the consumer who just accepts it?
I think everyone has to be blamed. It's consumer demand at the end of the day which pushes sellers to provide you that type of food commodity. Consumer will want a red apple, a shiny apple, and he will take the apple, dip it in malathion and give it to you back shiny and red. So again, consumer has to be educated. Consumer education can go a long way in mitigating this problem.
Ten years ago, one could have said, oh, but there's no alternative. Today, no one has an excuse to say there's no alternative. For the farmers, the organic farming, ecological production alternative exists, has been tested, tried, put to use. For consumers, safe, Healthy organic food is now available in outlets across the country.
If we say from the next year, very next year, we stop pesticides and go for organic, we will be in a bigger problem than this of hunger.
It is a myth, and more than a myth, it's a lie, because our data shows that organic production is actually much higher, because organic production goes hand in hand with biodiversity. And the minute you increase your basket of products, the minute you move from a monoculture to a biodiverse output, growing your amaranth with your beans and your ragi and your tur and all of that mixture, the productivity in biological terms can be thousands of times more than the most chemically intensive farm, monoculture farm. In terms of financial profitability, 90% of our farmers are spending money on either chemical costs or costs like diesel for tractors and other input costs. 84% of our farmers today are indebted because of input costs, production costs. That is something you get rid of the minute you move to organic. And we have monitored that our farmers are getting 3-fold higher incomes by the shift away from chemicals. And that's why I talk about the farmer's economy being positive in organic. Of course, this economy leaves the big companies impoverished, and that's what they don't like.
Birds, they are the biggest biological indicators. So what is the impact of different developments in the environment that have their impact on the population of birds, their increase or decrease?
सर हम पूरे पंजाब में घूम रहे थे अर्जुन जी, बस एक खेत में आए जहां हमको चिड़ियाएँ दिखी। ऐसा आपके खेत और बाकी सब खेत में क्या अलग है?
ये बात तो हमारे को जो साइंटिस्ट आए पीयू से उनसे पूछा। अभी इसने हमारे काफ़ी 20 साल बाद हमने घोंसले देखे उसके, जो उसको बारबल बोलते हैं। उन्होंने बताया भी इसको जो बर्ड महसूस करता है, जो उसका सेफ एरिया उसको वहाँ ही रहेगा, वो जहाँ आपका घोंसला बनाएगा। जब पेस्टिसाइड यूज़ करेंगे तो वहाँ से आपका घोंसला छोड़कर चला जाएगा।
तो आपके खेत और दूसरे खेत में क्या फ़र्क है?
जो सीधी आँख से तो अब हम नहीं देख पाते, उसको हम जो महसूस कर सकते हैं। जो इसका ऑर्गेनिक प्रोडक्ट होगा उसका मतलब एक तो हेल्दी होगा, उसकी जो न्यूट्रिशन वैल्यू है जो कुदरत ने बनाई है उसमें वही होगी।
देश की धरती ओ मेरे देश की धरती सोना उगले उगले हीरे मोती। मेरे देश की धरती, मेरे देश की धरती, मेरे देश की धरती सोना उगले उगले हीरे मोती। मेरे देश की धरती, मेरे देश की धरती।